Hey guys, welcome to Pill Reaction, wherein we discuss about the drug and their adverse reactions. In this lecture, let's learn about oxygen saturation and pulse oximetry. So let's begin. When you breathe in the air from the atmosphere, air has oxygen that reach out the lungs, which passes to arterial blood through the exchange and becomes oxyhemoglobin. Then oxygen goes to tissues where the cells can use oxygen to make energy in the mitochondria through the electron transport chain that is simply oxidative phosphorylation. Remember that? Then after metabolism, carbon dioxide is released that goes to hemoglobin forming carb amino hemoglobin to the venous blood to the lungs where carbon dioxide is expelled out. Now coming to some of the key terminologies. The air we breathe contain 21% of oxygen. So the oxygen that we breathe also contains 21% of oxygen, which is known as fraction of oxygen inspired. Now, when oxygen reaches lungs via pressure gradient called as alveolar partial pressure, so that air can easily move into lungs from the high pressure to low pressure gradient, which is usually 104 millimeter mercuries. Now, for the exchange of oxygen from alveoli to arterial blood, we require our arterial blood to have a low partial pressure, right? So, as to maintain a pressure gradient that is 95 millimeter of mercury. Yeah, here comes the topic of the day. That is, when oxygen reaches hemoglobin, which is called as hemoglobin saturation or oxygen sat or oxygen percentage saturation or even SaO2. Let's make it simple. So, what's this saturation? This reminds me of my 10th syllabus, where we used to experiment with sugar in water, and sugar gets saturated. That means sugar will not get dissolved after addition of a fixed quantity into a particular glass of water. Now, coming back to our SaO2, which is simply percentage of hemoglobin bound to oxygen or oxygen that's on hemoglobin. Remember, hemoglobin, a tetramer, has a capacity to bind 4 oxygen molecules. The normal SaO2 accounts for 97% and below 93% is a problematic. We can easily check it by using pulse oximeter. Oxy is for oxygen, meter is nothing but measurement. So, how to measure the total amount of oxygen carried in the blood or simply oxygen content of the blood? So, oxygen content includes hemoglobin concentration, which is free. With that, free oxygen in the blood, oxygen that is saturated on hemoglobin. Now you may be wondering why free hemoglobin is also included in this calculation. For that, you need to know anemia, a condition where there is overall decreased RBC mass. That is simply there is decreased hemoglobin concentration with the normal oxygen saturation and arterial partial pressure. Here, hemoglobin is decreased, but oxygen on hemoglobin remains the normal. So, SaO2 remains 97% even in anemic patient. But still, the patient suffers with decreased hemoglobin and decreased oxygen content. So, probably this is why we can stick on to the definition of anemia as decreased oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. Now let's talk about oxygen dissociation curve or oxygen binding curve or even oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. So on y-axis we have the hemoglobin saturation and on the x-axis we have partial pressure of oxygen in arterial blood or simply PaO2. At the lungs, we have high oxygen saturation and arterial partial pressure, facilitating oxygenated blood to leave the alveoli and jump onto hemoglobin easily. Whereas at the tissues, oxygen saturation and arterial partial pressure is decreased so that oxygen can easily dissociate from the hemoglobin to enter into the cells. When we shift the sigmoid curve to right, we are decreasing oxygen saturation, that is, less oxygen on the hemoglobin, facilitating more oxygen to reach out to tissues, thus simply decreasing hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen. While when we shift the curve to left, we are increasing the oxygen saturation. That is, more oxygen is bound to hemoglobin, results in decreased oxygen release from the hemoglobin to tissues. That simply increases hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen. So wait, why we need to know about all these shifts? At first, due to the effect of temperature, at high temperature, the curve moves towards the right, which can be easily related during any exercise. Our skeletal muscle gets heated up, where temperature of muscle increases, allowing more oxygen to reach out to the muscle tissues. Secondly, the effect of 2,3 diphosphoglycerate, which is an intermediate product of glycolysis produced within the RBC. The high concentration of 2,3-DPG, that's nothing but 2,3-diphosphoglycerate, shifts the curve towards the right, which is essentially significant in placenta, where 2,3-DPG interacts readily with the adult hemoglobin, reducing oxygen unloading from the hemoglobin so that it's easily available for the fetus. So, as you know now what is oxygen saturation, let's check on its significance in COVID 19 patients. Currently, according to National Institutes of Health, recommends 92 to 96% of oxygen saturation range for COVID 19 patients. Given here is a blood oxygen levels chart, wherein 95 to 100% of oxygen saturation is considered to be a normal level, following 91 to 95% as concerning blood oxygen levels, and decreased or less than 90 percentage shows gradual decreased oxygen levels, and at 80 to 85% where low oxygen saturation affects your brain. Finally, at 67% of oxygen saturation or below, we get to see symptoms such as cyanosis and even severe metabolic effects on all over the body. So question remains the same, right? How to measure oxygen saturation quickly and easily, that too while simply sitting at home without any aid of medical practitioners. Here comes the answer to your question. By using pulse oximeter that measures arterial oxygen levels without any invasion. Now till now we discussed about SaO2, but where on earth we got this SpO2? Chill dude, SpO2 is nothing but measuring saturated arterial oxygen via pulse oximeter, which is where it gets the name SpO2 instead of SaO2. Coming to working of pulse oximeter. The device simply works on the principal spectrophotometry, that is based on affinities for light of different wavelengths by oxyhemoglobin and deoxyhemoglobin. As pulse oximeter emits two types of light, that is red light of 650 nanometers and infrared light of 950 nanometers, which is observed by oxy and deoxyhemoglobin with different affinities, which is then detected by the detector below. Now, why it's so accurate? The device also undergoes some extra calculations such as size of the finger, any other surrounding light such as sunlight, and even absorbance of light by the rest of the tissues other than oxy and deoxyhemoglobin. The device even has a reference curve saved in its memory for an accurate, precise outcome that it provides. Usually, you need to check on the device for its display for pulse rate or simply heart rate on the upper half, whereas SpO2 displayed on the lower half of the device, which has been mentioned here in this picture. Remember, the location of pulse rate and SpO2 reading may vary with the different models of pulse oximeter. Thus, a pulse oximeter can easily measure arterial blood oxygen saturation and heart rate. So now you need to just clip the device on the mid finger or on the toe or even on the earlobe. To get a more precise reading, some studies showed the middle finger of right hand gives the best accuracy. And do remember to remove any nail polish or tattoos from the finger which is used to detect the SpO2. And just in a matter of seconds, we get the readings. So, does it have any risk? Not really, as it's the safest one and non-invasive one. Rarely, one may experience minor irritations such as skin rashes and sensitivity. And the final step using a pulse oximeter is to take your index finger and smash that like button. Okay, I was just kidding. That's obviously not the step. Thank you for watching. If you think this video helped you gain knowledge, then please consider it sharing. Let's learn together. For more such pill reaction videos, subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more.